Welcome to the liberating river where spiritual freedom meets soul aligned wealth. I'm Wanda.
That's the hard question you must ask, and its nuances. Because community matters, does. Family matters. Helping people matters. I'm not saying that. But there is a major difference between support and self destruction. There's a difference between generosity and guilt, between love and obligation. And many people were never taught healthy boundaries around money. And I'm even going to go this way, especially in communities where survival has existed for generations. Sometimes multiple generations experience this. The instability, the housing insecurities, the financial stresses, the limited opportunities. The list goes on and on. That emotional trauma, that burnout, that scarcity mindset, that affects the nervous system. That affects our identity. That affects decision making. And I think sometimes people underestimate how deeply survival rewires people psychologically. We never think about that. We only think about what green is there. But there are planted those seeds of survival thinking that is detrimental for living our purposes, for living fully. Why is that? Because survival thinking says, get it now because it may disappear. Rest later. You're always in a rush mode. Security is fragile. Survival thinking says, you can lose everything. So now you don't do anything. You stay in that rut. Survival thinking also says, you have to carry everybody. And when survival becomes inherited, people tend to unconsciously recreate chaos because calm feels unfamiliar. And that's powerful. Really think about that. So inherited survival thinking becomes viral down through generations. And we unconsciously recreate every chaos that has been in the lineage. Usually it's like I said, unconsciously, but we do it. So what does that ultimately mean? Some people do not distrust peace consciously, but their nervous system distrusts it. And their life is built on that. They are so accustomed to tension that stability feels strange. And this affects relationships, all types of relationships. Of course, family relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, business partnerships. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Money amplifies emotional dynamics already present underneath the surface in you. It amplifies it. It's like sunlight. That's why financial conversations can become emotionally charged so quickly. Because oftentimes people are not only discussing dollars. They are discussing what? Safety, trust, power, identity, fear, abandonment, shame, control, worthiness. And if people don't understand their own inherited patterns, they may unintentionally, I must say, project them onto everyone else around them. If you haven't noticed, I think inheritance is deeper than property. We pass down nervous systems, communication styles, emotional regulation, financial habits, beliefs about worthiness, and of course, the ideas about survival. This is why self awareness matters so much. I did not say self judgment, self awareness, because the goal is not to blame your family. I'm not saying that. Do not blame your family. Most people were doing the best they could with the awareness they had. But healing requires honesty. And honesty says something may have been normalized that was not healthy. That does not mean people were evil. It just means patterns existed. And patterns, as I've been teaching along and along, patterns can change. That's the beautiful part of this all. Sometimes healings requires releasing inherited identities, pulling back from what was taught, verbally and non-verbally. There's a Taoist idea that when we let go of who we were conditioned to be, we make room for who we're becoming. Cycles are not permanent. Patterns are not destiny. Inheritance is not only material. I'm going to keep saying that. People inherit emotional realities as well, but they can also choose differently. We can also choose differently. That's where transformation begins. Transformation begins when somebody pauses long enough, and that's the key, long enough to ask, why do I relate to money this way? Have you ever asked yourself that? Why do I feel guilty resting? Why do I feel responsible for everyone? Why do I panic when I finally have stability? Why do I straight when opportunities appear? Why do I run from them? Why do I overwork? What am I trying to prove? Why do I feel unsafe receiving? Because that's a whole nother topic, knowing how to receive. Why do I feel guilty wanting more? Those questions matter so much in your development because awareness interrupts autopilot. I'm going to say that again. Awareness interrupts autopilot. And maybe one of the greatest forms of generational wealth is awareness itself. Across spiritual traditions, there's this recurring wisdom that awareness creates freedom. Whether people reference scripture, Taoist teaching, Buddhist mindfulness, or Hindu philosophy, many paths ultimately point toward the same truth. And you know what that is? Unconscious patterns create suffering, but awareness creates choice. Not denial, they never said that. Not performance, never said that. But awareness. Because once awareness enters a family line, new choices become possible. New conversations become possible. New emotional realities become possible. And I think that's why this conversation is so important. Because generational wealth is not, I'm going to keep saying it, only about money entering a family. It's about unhealthy patterns exiting one. I so need to say that again. Can I say it one more time? Generational wealth is not only about money entering a family. It is about unhealthy patterns exiting one. What good is inheritance if nobody knows emotional regulation? What good is wealth if everybody is emotionally exhausted? What good is success if nobody feels safe? Think about it. What good is provision if everybody is silently drowning? True wealth has to include peace. True wealth has to include emotional maturity. True wealth must include boundaries. And above all, true wealth has to include healing and wisdom. And I think many of us are quietly grieving while trying to build a new life, grieving old identities, grieving survival versions of ourselves, grieving relationships that no longer fit, grieving the realization that we can't save everybody. I'm guilty of that. That grief is real. It's real, especially for people who deeply love others, for people who are empathic, for people who were conditioned to carry emotional labor constantly. And I want to say this very gently. Hear me clearly. You can love people deeply without abandoning yourself. You can. You can help people without destroying your peace. You absolutely can. You can care without carrying everything. You can support without becoming responsible for everyone's life choices. Don't carry that load. And honestly, some people need permission to stop carrying entire emotional systems alone. I release you because exhaustion has become normalized and it's unfortunate. Hyper independence has become glorified. Burnout has become romanticized. Oh my gosh, what's going on? But exhaustion is not the same thing as purpose. Sometimes exhaustion is unresolved survival conditioning. That's what I believe in my opinion. And maybe this season is not about proving how much you can carry. Did you think about that? Maybe the season is about learning discernment, learning balance, learning boundaries. I came into the new year talking about this is a season of creating boundaries, learning sustainability, learning that your value is not tied to self sacrifice. That is so important because some of us only feel worthy when they are depleted. I'm going to let you sit with that. Did you hear me? Sometimes, hopefully, it's not you, but if it is you, I'm gently saying, and I'm bringing it to the forefront. Sometimes people only feel worthy when they are depleted. They only feel valuable when they are rescuing. They only feel needed when they are overextending. But your humanity matters too. That's what I'm trying to say. Your peace absolutely matters. Your future matters. And if you are trying to build generational wealth, you cannot only focus on money, you must also focus on emotional patterns, stress patterns, communication patterns, relationship patterns. Your nervous system patterns. What's your nervous system telling you? Because wealth without emotional maturity can collapse quickly. You've seen it. I don't even need to go there. And perhaps one of the most courageous things any one of us can do is become the one who interrupts inherited dysfunction without becoming consumed by bitterness. Please don't take on bitterness. Do not take on bitterness. Understand and see and recognize and name, okay, this is what I learned from X, Y, and Z. Absolutely. But don't become bitter. You now know better, so do better. That takes maturity. That takes compassion. And that takes wisdom. Healing is not about becoming emotionally cold. You never heard me say that. Healing is about becoming emotionally honest and emotionally responsible. And maybe some of you listening are realizing this. I have inherited roles I never consciously chose. Maybe you became the parentified child. Maybe you became the emotional caretaker, the achiever, the rescuer, or maybe the invisible one, or maybe the strong one. But your role is not your identity. And your survival adaptation is not the fullness of who you are. You are allowed to evolve beyond survival. You are allowed to build differently. You are allowed to create new emotional realities. You are allowed to experience peace without guilt. You are allowed to desire stability. Absolutely. You are allowed to desire abundance. You are allowed to stop apologizing for wanting more than survival. And maybe that's where true generational change begins. Not simply with income, I'm going to keep saying that, but with awareness, with healing, with emotional maturity, with setting boundaries, with wisdom, with courage, with somebody finally deciding, can you be there with me? Can you be there with me to finally decide the patterns may have reached me, but they do not have to continue through me? Can we reach this place right here and decide that? Can we reach it? I'm gonna say that again. Those patterns I might have inherited, but they do not have to dictate and run through me. The choice is yours. May your awareness create freedom. May your boundaries protect your peace. May your wisdom outgrow inherited fear. And may you continue building a life rooted not only in wealth, but in wholeness. Until next time, keep flowing in freedom.